5 Live Formula One.
Well, it went down to the closing stages, but in the end, it was the championship leader, Oscar Piastri, who nicked pole position away from his teammate, Lando Norris. Max Verstappen lines up third. You're listening to the Chequered Flag podcast post-qualifying review of the Spanish Grand Prix. Alongside myself, Harry Benjamin is the former F2, F3 and Alpine F1 development driver, Oliver Caldwell. Ollie, Oscar Piastri looked strong from FP3 onwards. McLaren have looked strong all weekend too. But in the end, it was a mighty final lap that really saw him go, nearly 2.5 tenths quicker than Norris. It was a good swing back for Piastri after Norris was on pole in Monaco last weekend.
Yeah, both McLarens looking super strong all weekend, topping every session so far between the two of them. But Oscar Piastri managing to be very decisive and show a very strong pace in qualifying there. 2.5 tenths is quite a big gap to Lando Norris. And Lando certainly not looking as happy as he would have liked after that qualifying session. Definitely wanting to be on pole and continue the momentum onwards.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's hear it from your pole sitter, Oscar Piastri, speaking after taking that final flyer.
Oscar, congratulations. That looked like a pretty mega lap out there. Can you talk us through it?
It was good. I think the first half lap in particular was very strong. The second part of the lap was maybe not perfect, but it was clearly good enough. So I'll take it for sure. I felt very comfortable today in particular, but most of the weekend with the car. So it's been nice to deliver when it counts.
And what's your thinking for tomorrow? Long, hot afternoon ahead. A few strategic options. How are you looking ahead to that one?
There are a lot of strategic options available tomorrow. It's not going to be all about the start. I mean, keeping the lead will definitely help your race for sure, but you need to be quick for 66 laps, not just one. So it's going to be an interesting race for sure, and excited to see what we've got.
Oscar Piastri then starts on pole position. Alongside him will be teammate Lando Norris, and it's a long run down to turn one though, isn't it, Ollie? So a lot can happen in those 600 odd metres.
Yeah, it's one of the longest runs from the starting grid down to turn one. A good start is crucial because if you mess it up, you've got 18 other drivers behind you if you're on the front row. So both of them will be looking at getting a great start, and it will be battle into turn one for who comes out on top.
Where did it go wrong for Norris? I mean, I know we're talking fine margins here, but it all came down to that second lap in qualifying, didn't it?
Yeah, Lando Norris was ahead on track of his teammate Oscar Piastri, but just didn't put it together. He had a green sector 1, and then it just fell apart, making a small mistake in sector 2 and not really carrying it on well to the end of the lap. Whereas Oscar Piastri, dominant, 2.5 tenths is a lot, and putting it all together at the moment it mattered with 2 purple sectors.
I think that's one of the best pole laps of the year, because we talk about the margin. Up until now, the average margin, I think, has been just around about 1/10 of a second as the biggest pole margin that we've had. This was 2.5 tenths. That is a long time in Formula One. I think that we've got to underline just how special a lap that was from Oscar Piastri. I mean, you know what it's like to hook up a lap around this circuit. How good of a lap is that for Piastri to pull out?
It was, extremely needed and a very good lap. 2.5 tenths. Lando Norris is no slouch. Quickest in one of these sessions earlier this weekend. They're both in the quickest car with the same equipment and both world-class drivers. 2.5 tenths is a statement, and it was needed after Lando Norris took victory in Monaco last weekend and started to get momentum back. Piastri's almost closed the door on that momentum and put him sort of back in his place.
Is exactly what he needed to do, really. Bounce back straight away after 2 kind of uncharacteristic, not completely off the pace weekends for Oscar, but 2 uncharacteristic weekends, the early braking in Tamburello and Imola, and a couple of crashes during practice for Monaco. So this will be, I think he said it makes a change from last year. He qualified 10th last year. Well, this time around, it's pole position, and it's a McLaren front row lockout. They have not achieved that since 1998 with Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard. They have not won a Spanish Grand Prix since Kimi Räikkönen in 2005. I think those records, well, one of them's already been updated. The other one might well just be a formality come tomorrow. So it is a McLaren front row lockout. Lando Norris in second. Let's hear from him.
Lando, trading times with Oscar there at the end of Q3. Both gave it a good go for pole. Can you talk us through that final segment and how your runs unfolded?
Yeah, run one was good. Was a good lap. Run two just a little bit more untidy. I still improved surprisingly. So I think it showed with some of the mistakes that I made, I probably didn't expect to improve at all, and I still did. So showed that the pace was easily there. I just needed to tidy it up a little bit. But that happens sometimes. But still happy with P2. 1-2 for the team is a good result.
Good starting spot for tomorrow, of course. What's your thinking there? Looks like a long, hot afternoon ahead. A few strategic options. So how do you look ahead to that one?
It's a long Sunday. A lot of laps, a lot of degradation, a lot of management, and a long run down to turn one. So opportunities for us, but I mean also for other people. I don't expect an easy fight without Red Bull and with the Ferraris. So I expect a tough Sunday, but excited for it.
Norris then with a bit of work to do, but as we've said, it is a long run down to turn one. There are overtaking opportunities available to DRS zones too. Max Verstappen in the end, Ollie, was the closest challenger to him. Will he be satisfied with that?
Max seems satisfied with that. They know they were on the back foot coming into this weekend. They've been really pushing to try and take the edge off of McLaren. But Max's first lap in that qualifying was a bit down. He was half a second off at one point. So did manage to put it a bit more together to go P3. But I think he maximised that car and he knows it. But he will be trying into turn one. He knows where he has to pass these McLarens if he has to have any hope of winning this race.
Let's hear from him.
So Max, P3, you gave it a good go. How are you feeling about that session?
I feel okay. I think we did extract a lot out of it. I'm happy at least to be ahead of the cars that were very close behind me. It was, of course, unfortunately not really enough to fight for pole, but that was also not really, I think, expected going into qualifying.
Good place to start from still, of course. What's your thinking heading into tomorrow with the strategy? It's going to be a hot afternoon.
Yeah, it can be a long afternoon. The tires are overheating a lot around here, so we just focus on our own pace and see what we get.
Looking forwards or backwards tomorrow, do you think?
We'll see tomorrow what happens there.
Well, Max Verstappen then, I mean, how satisfied can you be with third place when you're Max Verstappen? But just seemed like that was all she wrote for the Dutchman on that one. It's interesting though, isn't it, on a weekend, Ollie, where we've had this technical directive come in that Red Bull have really been pushing for to essentially the permitted level of flex for front wings has been reduced by 5 millimeters. So how much they are flexing when a load is applied to them has been changed. Front wings don't flex unless that gives a performance advantage. That's why they've all been doing it. So once that is reduced, you would think, well, maybe there's going to be a shift in the performance order of the competitive order. We've not quite seen that yet. But is it too early to tell yet? Are Red Bull, were they pinning too much on this perhaps?
I think a couple of teams, one of those including Red Bull, were really blowing this out of proportion of how much a change it would do. Ferrari being another one, yes, it might have changed something down in the midfield, but these teams have known about it for a while. So McLaren even saying that they ran it earlier in the year with Lando Norris and Imola, it hasn't changed a single thing. And even though Red Bull's top brass were saying that it might close the gaps, Max Verstappen was actually very disproven of that before the weekend even began. He didn't seem to think there would be any change even on the Thursday. So yeah, not quite the hope and the change that they were expecting.
Well, especially at a time when these were introduced to try and hinder McLaren, but the pole advantage that we've been talking about for Oscar Piastri seems to suggest the complete opposite of that. Meanwhile, at a track where we've got high-speed corners, which might benefit the likes of Verstappen and Red Bull, where they have been closer to McLaren on tracks like this, well, that hasn't quite turned out to be the case. They are still the next best challengers. So we'll see. They may have a slight limitation going forward. Canada in a couple of weeks' time might be a better tell, but at the moment we're not seeing too much of that impact here. While we're on Max Verstappen, I just want to touch on his teammate Yuki Tsunoda down in 20th position. I mean, the position is bad enough, but I think there's a bigger conversation that is now going to be had. Is Yuki Tsunoda's been brought into that team in replacement of Liam Lawson, who could barely get himself off the back row when he in his 2 Grand Prix weekends for the team. I don't doubt Yuki Tsunoda's pace. He's a quick driver. He's not as quick as Max Verstappen. That is abundantly clear, but he is not the slowest driver in the field, 20th and last on his best push lap. Surely this suggests that there is a wider issue here with something going on in that team and the way they handle that second seat.
Yeah, I think it's been abundantly clear now for a while that there is something going on with that second Red Bull seat. The amount of drivers they put in there, I think they're going to be starting to pick from the crowd soon enough. Yuki Tsunoda.
I'll have a go.
Yuki Tsunoda obviously doing a great job in the RB at the beginning of the year. That was why he was promoted to the Red Bull seat. And they expected him to do a great job. He expected himself to do a great job. And it's just not coming together. I have no clue what's going on with that second car. I don't think any more than the top brass at Red Bull have any idea with what's going on at that car. Do you have any idea?
No, because that's the thing. He was up in his final sector. It was green, personal best. Looked like he was up on Hulkenberg at one point, which is the guy he needed to beat to get into Q2, and then it all just went away from him in that final corner, it seemed.
Yeah, he did 2 sets of tyres. Franco Colapinto did a great first run on his first set of tyres ahead of his teammate Pierre Gasly, only then for it to come crashing down with a technical issue in the car, not even being able to do a second set. And Yuki Tsunoda couldn't even pass him doing 2 sets of tyres. So who knows what happened there?
Well, let's see what Red Bull do overnight with Yuki. Maybe they'll make some changes and he'll start from the pit lane. We shall see. Let's head back up the order then, because behind Max Verstappen, just the sole Red Bull, we have George Russell. Identical lap time set in the end, but because Verstappen set it first, he gets the 3rd place. Russell has to deal with 4th. And again, though, it wasn't a straightforward quali for George Russell either. Looked quick and has actually looked quick all weekend long, but he had a few complaints to make over the radio.
Yeah, interesting one from George, because earlier in that Q3 session, he was offering, or even end of Q2, he was offering to give his teammate Kimi Antonelli a tow to sort of bring him up the pecking order. Russell then, made a comment about he wanted to do something that was discussed off radio internally within the team that was worth about 0.2 of a second. Whether that was a tow from Kimi Antonelli giving him the tow down the main straight, we're not sure. But if that was the case, 0.2 would have put him ahead of Norris and on that front row. So I'm sure there'll be a bit of a debrief going on internally there. And that could have been something that Mercedes could have looked at doing. Yeah,
was there more on the table? I'll tell you what, let's hear what George Russell had to say after qualifying in 4th.
George, P4, how are you feeling about that? Pretty much what you could get out of it today?
Yeah, it was very close with Max and Lando, definitely not in the fight for pole. But of course, other than Monaco, we've been in the top 5 every single race, so we know every single qualifying. So we know that is where the car is on a Saturday. Our goal at the moment is to try and improve the race pace. We've made some pretty drastic changes to the setup this weekend, so that's positive to see. It hasn't hindered the quali pace. Whether it's going to improve the race pace is another story.
What about the race tomorrow? What's your thinking there? Long, hot afternoon ahead, and we saw what you did at the start last year.
Yeah, I started P4 last year, so it's not a bad place to start here in Barcelona. I don't know, recent races we've been very bad in the race, but in Bahrain, which was a similar sort of circumstance, the C1, 2, 3 tyre, 2-stop strategy, we finished 2nd. The races recently with the 2-stop, but it's been the C4, C5, C6, we've been very bad, so that's the only silver lining I'm taking.
Russell then had to settle for P4 with no slipstream helping him. Teammate Kimi Antonelli down in 6th. Lewis Hamilton rounded out the top 5 for Ferrari. Out-qualifies teammate Charles Leclerc for, I think, only the 2nd time this season. So it's 5th, which is not what Hamilton wants, but it's better than where we thought he might be come the end of practice.
Yeah, who knows exactly what Lewis Hamilton's glass is, half empty or half full. He's ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc, which is a positive, but as a 7-time world champion, he doesn't want to be in 5th either. He wants to win, so a difficult one for him. And yeah, let's hopefully he can do a better performance this weekend in Monaco than he did in Monaco. And yes, outscore his teammate.
Yeah, he had some gearbox issues or gear issues at the end of the final practice, which they obviously seemed to sort himself. He did outqualify his teammate Charles Leclerc, but Charles Leclerc didn't do a second run in Q3. Leclerc had been 0.3 up on Hamilton at the halfway point of the session, so I wonder if Leclerc hadn't have ran out of tyres, then it could have been roles reversed. But of course, he did run out of tyres, and that was all she wrote on that one. But let's hear from the 7-time champion, Lewis Hamilton, who starts 5th.
Lewis, I know you want more than P5 on the grid, but from where you were yesterday with the car, how are you feeling about that session and where you're lining up tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely an improvement from where we've been. Definitely an improvement from I would say from my qualifying side. So I'm relatively happy with it. We're not P3. We're definitely not where we wanted to be.
Were you able to make some positive changes to the car over the night? Feeling a little bit better in terms of setup and feel?
Yeah, I think the car is moving in. I think setup-wise and just process-wise, I think this weekend had gone in the right direction. I think we had some problems through some of the practice sessions with, steering wheel issue we had in the second one, and then also some downforce issue we had on in P2, which really kind of there was a lot of 2% of performance aero performance from the front end we were missing. So to have recovered and got the car in a good place, I'm relatively happy.
And what about the race tomorrow? What's your feeling there?
It's going to be close. It's really close between us all. So I'm going to try and get on the podium for once.
Hamilton 5th then, ahead of Kimi Antonelli in 6th, as I mentioned, Charles Leclerc in 7th. Rounding out the top 10, good result, really encouraging result for Pierre Gasly in the Alpine in 8th. Feels like he's quietly gone about his business and has been rewarded.
Yeah, that Alpine seems a bit up and down, but Pierre Gasly sort of paving the way for the way that they want to go. They look to be struggling a little bit with their front wing and the car balance this weekend, but solidly into Q3. Always nice to be on the edge of getting some points, even if it is at the end of qualifying. So Pierre Gasly will be looking to have, I'm sure, quite a quiet race tomorrow and just steal away some points.
His teammate Franco Colapinto, you mentioned earlier, had a bit of a issue in qualifying, which meant he didn't get his second lap in Q1. Some issue that the team are looking into. He ended up having to pull up on the grassy verge on the exit of the pit lane on the right hand side. But what I thought was equally disappointing is clearly this pace in that Alpine has been displayed by Pierre Gasly's qualifying. Colapinto at one point, let's face it, looked nowhere. He looked so lacking confidence. But I thought he came alive in that qualifying. I think there was a result there for Colapinto to be had.
Yeah, really disappointing, let's say start of the season for Franco Colapinto, but into this weekend, issues in FP1, looking really unconfident in the car in FP2 and FP3, and then suddenly in Q1 pulled a lap out the bag and was, I think, 2.5 tenths up on his teammate Pierre Gasly, put a second set of tyres on, confidence at an all-time high, and the car has no drive, and he just rolls out the pit lane and immediately to a stop before even passing the end of the pit wall.
When you're a driver, though, do you still take confidence from that? Because at the end of the day, that's not your fault. We think some sort of technical, mechanical problem. Can you still take a lot of comfort if you're Franco Colapinto from the fact that there was speed there?
I think if you're in a position like George Russell in Monaco, where your car broke down in Q2 and you were looking at a great result in Q3 and you're on the back of a great few races, you wouldn't be too bothered. Yeah, you'd be annoyed about the weekend being done, but whatever. Franco Colapinto, this was the win he needed to boost his confidence, and again, taken away from him through no fault of his own, but it's just not giving him any boost to his energy at all.
Well, let's see if he can find anything. He'll have to go from the back. Rounding out the top 10, though, Isaac Hadjar in 9th. I mean, another word for the French rookie who is absolutely flying right now and impressing tenfold, including the Red Bull team principal, Christian Horner. That is his 3rd consecutive top 10 starts. This triple header has been sublime for Hadjar so far.
Yeah, Isaac Hadjar doing a great job in that RB, leading a team as a rookie with no experienced teammate there to cover him, doing a great job. Seems to be getting consistent points, building up. You'd almost want to say don't do too well because you're going to end up in that Red Bull seat.
Yeah, so what happens then when he's in the Red Bull next time out in Canada and he's qualifying 20th and last?
Well,
what do they do?
Isaac is he's quite strong, as we've heard on the radio and interviews. I'd like to see him tell Helmut Marko, no thanks, Helmut, you jump in the car. I'm going to stay at RB.
I would pay good money to see that as well. That Hadjar continuing his good form, maybe too good form. Dial it back a bit, Hadjar. And Fernando Alonso giving the Spanish fans something to smile about, getting himself inside the top 10. That's his third consecutive top 10 start as well. So that Aston Martin giving something, but it was a mixed day for the Spanish fans, wasn't it? Because Carlos Sainz, nowhere.
Yes, very odd one that. Carlos Sainz out in 18th, out in Q1. Up and down all weekend, both the Williams, Alex Albon missing FP1 due to the rookie Victor Martins jumping in, but then also having an issue later on with his gearbox power unit. But yeah, Alex Albon out-qualifying his teammate once again, up in P11. A big disparity between the two.
Indeed, Albon 11th, Sainz down in 18th, just ahead of the Colapinto and Tsunoda and those various incidents that we've spoken about already. We wouldn't normally talk about who qualified in 12th place too much, but has to be said, Gabriel Bortoleto has really impressed me in this qualifying session. That's his best qualifying of the year, so therefore his best qualifying of his career. The rookie, the F2 reigning champion, out-qualifies his more experienced teammate Nico Hülkenberg. That'll be a really good boost for him, I think.
Yeah, it's really where we've seen Gabriel Bortoleto shine, I would say, quite a lot for the first time this year. He's been quite muted through good and, not good, not bad. The car's just not looking that quick. But this weekend, 12th, best qualifying of the year, right on the edge of the points. If he can just stay there at the start and some people ahead of him have a bit of a bad race, a bad pit stop, he could be on the edge of getting his first points of the year.
Let's see. That would be a massive boost for Bortoleto, who currently sits 21st and last in the Constructors' Championship, in the Drivers' Championship, I should say. Bortoleto then 12th, ahead of Lawson, Stroll, Ollie Behm in the top 15, Nico Hülkenberg 16th, ahead of Ocon, Sainz, Colapinto and Tsunoda. But it will be a front row start for Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. McLaren locking out that front row. Now, it has to be said that only 3 times has anybody won the Spanish Grand Prix from outside of the front row. Bearing that in mind, Mr. Caldwell, what's your podium tomorrow?
I'm going to go a bit left wing here, and I'm going to say Oscar Piastri is going to win this race. I'd love to see Max Verstappen do a lunge into turn 1 and end up second, and maybe even a Mercedes to round out the podium. I'm going to go with that, a bit left wing.
Okay, I'm going to go. I think Piastri's going to convert it into the win. I think Verstappen might do something and put himself in the middle, and I'm going to put Norris third. That's what I'm going. Let's see those 66 laps of racing around the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Lando Norris starts second. Oscar Piastri locking out the front row for McLaren on pole position. We'll be guiding you through every single lap. We'll be on air on BBC Radio 5 Live from 1:45, building up to lights out at 2 o'clock with myself, Ollie, and the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. But thank you for your time. Let's see what happens come the end of round 9. The Spanish Grand Prix awaits us. Look forward to it. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.